and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Daryl Grove, and I'm joined by a man who always looks better on second viewing. It's Taylor Rockwell. Hello.
Hello, because the first time it's just so emotional, It's tough to really evaluate everything, and then second viewing, you can really see the individual performance.
That's exactly how it
Gotcha,
So we are here with
I meant that as a joke, but it was actually what we're doing.
Yep. A second look at USA 6, Honduras 0.
Yep.
You'll be aware that we put out our quick take, hot take review immediately, 2 minutes after kickoff. After full time.
Yep.
We hit record, gave you our immediate
That'd be
reactions.
a little bit premature.
Yeah. We're not going to go through all 6 goals because we kind of ended up doing that accidentally in the quick take, hot take. But there are some things that sort of we've watched it again and maybe some revised opinions. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, because I think with the 6 goals, more or less we're confident in what we said at the time. Yep. I feel like we had a good read on those. But there are a few things, kind of general approaches to the game or general occurrences within the game that I think merit a second discussion.
Yep. Later in the show, in case you're wondering, we will be previewing USA v Panama. That'll be in the second half of this show. All right, first thing I want to sort of say we kind of missed or underappreciated is Michael Bradley's performance. I'd go as far as saying I owe Michael Bradley an apology.
Really?
Because I think my sort of comments after on the quick take, hot take were that the US was really good, but it was kind of an unimpressive performance from Bradley. Too many missed passes, and I think I accused him of like his defending not being as good. Second viewing, I was all kinds of wrong.
And I think this is kind of the hardest thing. We've talked about this before about doing like live analysis of soccer. And it goes back to, I know I've said this many times, but I've heard different announcers talk about when they do American football and how they're not watching the play, they're watching what the line is doing, or they're watching things away from the play to see what else is happening within it. It's really hard to do that, especially with the U.S. national team, because it is an emotional investment for both of us. That I think with Michael Bradley in this case, I think we focused on, there was a couple times when he had some pretty poor passes. Yeah. There were definitely a couple times when he didn't go 100% into challenges, and it just seemed like he was a little bit slow to react.
Okay.
And those kind of stand out, and then you don't look at everything else he's doing that's off the ball, that's very underrated, and that allows this team to function the way it did.
Because the missed passes that we're talking about, they sort of ring out in your mind, and then when you sort of do the mental calculation of what you think his passing percentage was, you think he's missed a lot more than he has. I went back and looked at his passing graph afterwards, and we watched the game again. So many like just quick passes, he keeps the ball moving. When he misses one, you remember it more.
Because didn't he end up only missing like 8 passes in the game or something like that? Yeah. So it's just that those 8 were, like I remember the one that was a hospital ball that put Jeff Cameron into trouble. There was one where he gave it directly to Honduras.
Hospital, just to be clear.
Yeah, exactly. So there are those moments that kind of stand out.
Yep.
And because I remember thinking going into the end of the first half, that, like, yes, he scored and that's good, but there were still deficiencies in his game. And I think that we maybe fell victim to focusing on those big negative moments and not looking at everything else he was doing.
But it was interesting to like be in someone else's shoes, because I feel like these are the types of complaints that people have about Michael Bradley. The people who think that Michael Bradley is not good enough for the US and should be dropped and he's the root of the problem. Like I didn't go that far, but it's interesting to see it from that perspective when you only watch it once. Yeah,
and I think I'll say this, that if that's your opinion of Michael Bradley based on those 2 categories, then you're probably right. Like if your feeling is he should be your central midfielder, your number 4 or whatever it is, you're that kind of holding
number
important.
6. He wears number 4.
Yeah, should be like that holding, like the very controlling midfielder who shouldn't be misplacing passes and who should be kind of always moving the ball forward. I can see why you'd be frustrated, especially if you're expecting him to do the Kyle Beckerman, winning the ball, going hard into tackles.
There's only one Sergio Busquets though.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I'm saying?
But so I guess what I mean to say is that like this is why soccer is weird, is because if that is your gauge for if he had a good game or not, then you're going to say he had a bad game. Because I think that's not his strong suit. I think he doesn't do a very good job of going hard into tackles. Maybe that's coached. Maybe that's just his own like way of going about it. And I think sometimes he makes not great decisions when it comes to passing. But I think in those moments, I think they're very much outweighed by the things that we were noticing upon second viewing.
And this gets to the second complaint I had, which turns out to be the most wrong thing. I think, I haven't really listened, but I think in the quick take, hot take, I said, it seemed like a lot of times he would come over as if he was trying to help tackle someone, but actually wouldn't be of any use because he's just sort of standing there next to the guy who's defending the guy with the ball. Turns out what he's doing every time is cutting off angles, right?
Yeah.
And I just completely missed that. When you watch it again, he comes over and makes sure that the guy who's being forced into the corner by, say, Bedoya can't turn in field because Bradley comes over and blocks that angle off. And that's what Michael Bradley is brilliant at, it turns out, in this game, cutting off all the angles.
And I want to say like the best moment of it, in my opinion, was in the 48th minute, where he does...
Is this like first half stoppage time or early second half?
I think early second half. He does exactly what we're talking about here, which is he steps out, he also helps everybody, he organizes everybody so everyone steps together. They keep that kind of contained line where they block off angles, they block off passing channels. Honduras are forced backwards, they can't really get anything going. Then there's a loose ball, and Bradley goes to go into that 50-50 challenge and kind of pulls out and doesn't go in all the way. And so if you're watching from that perspective, you're going to see, look, he pulled out of another challenge, he should have won that.
Yes,
but that's
it's
ignoring.
really obvious, right? It really catches your eye when you see him go for a tackle but be kind of weak in it, and then the guy comes out with the ball the other side. Famously, Gio dos Santos did it in, November? Or was it the CONCACAF Cup? But it definitely happened. Yeah,
but if you do, like, if that's your focus, then you're missing the part where he organized the midfield, pushed everybody out, controlled where everybody was going, made sure that he himself was doing a good job of kind of shifting around so that there was never an obvious pass on for Honduras. And in that sequence alone, there's one moment when basically the player goes back. I forgot who it is, but he goes, it's probably Beckelis, I think, the right back. He goes to pass inside, and you can see him like move the right leg back to do it, and then has to stop because Bradley shuffles over a half yard, and that's enough to cut off that pass completely.
So here's my take on Bradley as defensive midfielder. So after really thinking about this, not great in like 50-50 tackles.
Right.
Like for some reason, not great. And there's no saying that he is as good as Kyle Beckerman or any sort of like tough guy defensive midfielder in terms of 50-50 winning the ball. But excellent at reading the game and blocking off the channels and like stopping passes from happening before they start. Also excellent at stepping and winning the ball, like intercepting a pass. But that's also reading the game as opposed to winning 50-50s.
Right, and that's what I kept seeing basically with people saying, oh, he missed challenges, oh, he had some misplaced passes, and other people saying, yeah, but did you see his ball recoveries? Did you see the defensive work he did? That's kind of what you're going to end up with.
So he's essentially a nerd. Like he's really good at reading, but not great in a fight.
Yes. But I also wonder, like, you know that I'm a big proponent of the idea that if a player does something, even if it's negative routinely, it can either be like that it's just something. Well, it's either they're really not good at it, and it's just something that they're not going to be good at. Paul Scholes comes to mind when it comes to tackling.
Any tackling.
Tackling. Or it can be that it's something that he's been directed. And I'm just saying, if Bruce Arena has said, look, you are the last line of defense when it comes to that midfield, you cannot overcommit, you cannot concede free kicks, because it's especially in the position he's in, given that it means that it's probably going to be 1v1 with them breaking, it's going to be a yellow card, almost certainly. And so,
or he could miss the tackle, and suddenly it's the entire midfield is bypassed, and it's just the attackers against what's left of the US defense.
Exactly. And so if he's been given the specific instruction, do not concede free kicks, do not go in hard and get a card, get a booking, anything like that, then it's tough to divorce yourself of that notion when it's not on the breakaway. When you are on the sideline at midfield and you can kind of afford to go in hard, it's really difficult to go from don't go in hard, don't go in hard, don't go in hard. Oh, now I have an opportunity. Now it's going to be 100. I think Jermaine Jones can do that, but I think Jermaine Jones stays at 100.
Okay, and we're not going to talk about Michael Bradley all show, but I think what you just said is really important to the way Michael Bradley allowed this whole team to function on Friday night. Have I got my days right? Yeah, Friday night. Because what happened was you got Bradley at the base of the midfield, right? Ahead of him, Pulisic, Nagbe, Leggett, and then later Bedoya, Altidore, and Dempsey. And he really would sit behind them all. And they were trying things, right? Part of the plan seemed to be, we talked about this, like Pulisic, just dribble, just try something, try and break open this Honduras defence. Often that would fail because it's a high-risk thing to try and go out of defence. When Honduras break, it's usually just Bradley and the defenders, and it's his job then to close passing lanes but not step up high and tackle and risk getting beat or conceding a free kick. Right? So he did a great job of slowing them up more than anything else so that everybody else then had time to get back and help defend.
First thing, Bradley and the Defenders, great name for a band. So I'll give you that one. Second,
but like 20 years from now when it's a kind of a niche reference.
Second, I'll also say, especially you look at his role and how important it was, given that you had that substitution you mentioned when Leggett goes out, in comes Bedoya. And that the United States really doesn't skip a beat there. They continue to perform well, and I think that's Michael Bradley helping to organize, and I think that's very much Bruce Arena giving people instructions and having kind of the same training so everybody knows exactly what to do, so everyone knows how to function if there is an injury, as there was twice in this game.
Well, can we talk about then sort of what the team sort of plan and function was now that we've seen it again?
Sure.
Because I noticed that Bedoya and Leggett and then Nagbe on the other side would actually tuck in quite tight, and that you almost could call this US formation a diamond. They got wide when the US had the ball, but when Honduras came at us, we squeezed in tight.
We did. And I think it points to like the discipline that was there, the work that had been done, because the one that stands out, and again, I'm sorry, I can't like remember specifics of who he goes to, but Bedoya comes in, and there's one sequence when he sprints to the middle, sprints back outside, sprints to the next man, and like slowly forces Honduras back. And as he does that, everyone else knows exactly where to step and fill, so that it's not just him running around with his head cut off and they just bypass him easily. It's every single like moment of pressure is filled by another player, so that again Honduras don't really have anything there, and I think that is what we kind of weren't able to see in that quick take hot take. But on the rewatch, admittedly at like 1:30 in the morning,
right? But on the rewatch, would you agree that was almost like the key feature of the US's game? Is every time Honduras had the ball, the US would sort of close the man with the ball and then slowly close off all his angles, and they would work as a team to close off all his angles, working together, because it was definitely the plan. It was clearly what the US has been working on, and I don't want to do the thing where we compare the US now to the US with Klinsmann, but this is a thing that didn't happen under Klinsmann, definitely is happening under Bruce Arena.
Yeah, and I want to say, actually unrelated to that, but kind of related to that. I said this to a person.
Semi-related?
Well, yeah, I said this to a person on Twitter who like said basically enough talking about Klinsmann.
Yes.
Let's move on. And I think we are both of the mindset that like, yeah, that would be fine. Like we would be happy to not mention Jurgen Klinsmann anymore. His tenure is done. Bruce Arena is here. Let's focus on what he's doing. Part of the reason why I think we do it is because we still get lots of tweets and emails saying, well, Klinsmann did this. Doesn't he deserve credit? Don't you think that he was the one who started this? And so it is sort of a thing that I think is on a lot of people's minds, and I think that's why we sometimes go back to that well. It's not just to pick on Jurgen Klinsmann and say, he did this poorly, Arena is getting this right.
Well, it's also part of the analysis to say what's new, what's different, what's changed in the last few months.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, very much so. So I just wanted to mention that there, and now continue to talk about what the United States was doing, because even in those first, I think on the hot take show, I was saying in the first 15 to 20 minutes, even with the United States still up 1-0, I had this feeling that Honduras would pull something back, because it felt like they were creating like not good chances, but good opportunities
Breaks.
by how quickly they were breaking. And I think a large part of that was that the United States was still settling a little bit, maybe still kind of reeling themselves from being up 1-0 so early. And so a lot of times we
thought this would take like an hour.
Yeah. But a lot of times it was either the United States getting caught in a break and maybe having too many people push forward and not quite having that discipline yet that I think they figured out as the game went on.
I'd still say Bradley still had the discipline, though. Even when everybody else was caught forward, Bradley was the one that still held down that defensive midfield spot.
Yeah.
If there was a 40, he held it down.
But I think, first of all, well done. Second of all, but I would say, but the way that I think Honduras were able to do it is that they would bypass Bradley because everybody had pushed out and maybe people weren't as marked up as they should have been. You can't leave him in the middle covering the entire field. That's going to be a problem.
He had a good go at it, though.
He did, but I think what Honduras would do really well is say they would stop. I know in the first half there was like one withdrawal into Nagby where he tried to dribble forward, he got stuck, and Honduras came right back. That was when the Nets had overcommitted numbers, and they passed that ball directly past Michael Bradley, so now he is kind of eliminated and he has to work to get back. So even then, I think it was the United States' game plan sort of coming into shape, and that was like when it wasn't quite there, that's when Honduras were able to get some chances. And then in the second half, very few chances for Honduras.
I think they were just demoralised and beaten, like especially when Pulisic scores, 15
seconds in? Yeah, that'll happen.
Can we talk about Christian Pulisic's role then? Because obviously his performance is the thing everybody is kind of weirdly most excited about.
And it's weird that we flipped a little bit, I'm going to say, because I think we were very high on Christian Pulisic in the hot take. And we did mention...
I still think he's a fine player.
Yeah. But we did mention that it seemed like he was a little bit wasteful at times. And I think your point was, well, that's... And I think credit to you because you picked this out very quickly, I think, that maybe he was given that freedom, that he was told, go out there, try to make stuff happen, do stuff, and we'll see if we get goals.
Yeah, I mean, that's how that first goal comes from him dribbling, getting stuck, but then carrying on and receiving that pass, and then his shot is saved and deflected to Leggett. Like, he maybe shouldn't have tried that dribble at the top of the box, but he was given the instruction, hey, go at them, try it, make something happen. And
I think he was. That's where I've come to, because, and again, this is another example of if you're focused on the successful dribbles, successful take-ons, he wasn't that good. I think it was 4 for 10 in dribbles completed. And his passing stats weren't that great. Again, they weren't terrible, but they weren't that great.
But they were all up the field and high risk, right?
True.
If he came and sat deep and just played balls to fullbacks, then he could get his percentages up, but it would be less effective.
But and all that is to say that, so if you look at those numbers, you can think, oh, he didn't have that good of a game. And I'm still kind of that mindset.
Numbers are rubbish.
But that's the thing but then you look at the fact that he was kind of routinely going at people that I think some of the chances the United States was able to get is because Honduras were a little bit like, oh no, he's coming again, and like weren't sure what to do, so they fouled, or weren't sure what to do, so they gave him like a little bit of a nudge afterwards, and he was able to play through it.
Literally, the Dempsey free kick, the one that he puts top left, comes from some beautiful like quick passing play. But there really is. There's like 4 one-touch passes in a row. It's like Dempsey and Pulisic, and then it's Pulisic again drives at the Honduras defense. He does the thing you love. Is it the Akacha rollover?
Yeah. He does like a half Akacha, because Akacha is you roll over with the top of your foot and then you step over with the opposite foot and then you continue on.
And just for anyone who's never seen this before, it's when if you're running, you essentially roll your foot over the top of the ball, but keep going. Try it. It's real hard.
It's real hard. And he does the roll over and then hit it with the outside of his right foot.
And then gets taken down.
Clobbered.
And Dempsey scores the free kick. But again, that's Pulisic just running at defense, trying to make something happen. What happens is a free kick. And I score from it.
And I think to go like way back, the other reason why I think you're absolutely correct that maybe he was given this kind of freedom to do what he wanted is because a while ago we had Bruce Arena saying he is starting to play central for Dortmund. We want to use him maybe there as well. And there were those kind of lines about like we're looking at playing him centrally as opposed to out wide. And I think that's because you can't have him do what he did and still be a wide player, because it requires, you saw Bedoya come on, you saw what Leggett was doing, you saw what Nagby was doing as well. It requires a lot of defensive work. You have to get back, you have to be in shape, you have to know your role. That like knowing your role, being like defensively organized and paying attention to your marks, that does not correlate with have fun and like dribble at people and see what you can make happen. So I think if you put him central in that attacking role, then it gives him that creative freedom a little bit. He literally
won number 10 and played in the attacking midfield role. But he did. This is the thing that impressed me the most about him, weirdly. Not so much his attacking play, but he did come back, and when the US was in defensive moments, like, not just a break, but when they actually had time to defend, he would sit alongside Michael Bradley in a 2-man central midfield. And he would be part of that thing of closing down the angles, making it hard for Honduras. Because you forget that when we've watched him for Dortmund a lot, right, over the last season and a bit, he's very good at that defensive work. It's not the flashy stuff that makes it onto Reddit, but he is really good at like staying with a player, closing the player down, denying a player space, all that kind of non-flashy stuff. That's the beauty of Pulisic. He's not just a sort of like genius guy who but is then lazy and just wants to do tricks. He's kind of a hard-working, disciplined player.
He's no Dimitar Berbatov.
That's the word. That's what I'm looking for.
And I want to say like a good example of this is there's a sequence in which I think Honduras try to break, and essentially there's Bedoya, Bradley, and Pulisic all come over and kind of start blocking off those angles and those channels. They're all within maybe 10 yards of each other. And I think my favorite part was the Honduran player opens up because there is a player in the middle. That's who he's trying to pass to. And both Bradley and Pulisic, Bradley is like to the right, he takes one step in. Pulisic also takes one step in, and they close that angle. And then as soon as the guy turns, they spread back out. It's just this
they're like the sliding doors on Star Trek.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what they look like. But they're like, it's that synchronized, but then they also move away to block additional angles. So it's, again, both of them know exactly what they need to do and how to proceed from there.
I think if we're talking about the same clip, I'm pretty sure someone posted this to Twitter and we retweeted it. So if you scroll back down our timeline, his name might have been Paul Wilson. Well, that may have been the name of the Harrisburg midfielder.
That was the name of the Harrisburg midfielder. Could be both. Who knows?
Could be both. Could be the same guy.
Who knows?
But on our Twitter timeline, you may be able to see this exact clip that Taylor is talking about. All right, anything else that we kind of only noticed on second viewing for this US team, Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're getting at overall is how organized the United States were. And I think it can be, again, difficult to see that in the moment. But just to see how often Michael Bradley would even be in an advanced position where he could have driven forward. Obviously, he scores the goal. That's an outlier there because he gets the ball and no one steps to him, and it's in the defensive third for Honduras.
But I think he does come and receive it, and he's still behind the rest of the US attacking players. And actually, I would argue that's what makes the space for him, is that Honduras is occupied with Dempsey and Pulisic and Nagby and all the other guys, right?
But I think even...
Because Figueroa steps to Dempsey, remember? That's how the space opens up.
He drops off and then comes back to try to get Bradley, but it's too late. But there's other sequences in which Bradley could have driven forward. He could have been one of the the front prong of attackers.
In 2012 he would have.
Yeah, and Pulisic could have sat. And he really does. You can just see him say, like, nope, that's not what I'm supposed to do. And he'll, like, lay it off or, like, do a square, even kind of like a backwards pass to Pulisic or Bedoya or whomever, and then he drops back in and holds that defensive shape. And again, I think all of that points to the United States had been given, as we'd come to hear about Bruce Arena, just kind of specific, basic instructions. This is what we're doing. Execute this game plan. Maybe Christian Pulisic dribble a little bit. We'll see what happens. And you get the result. I'm not saying that it's like that's going to guarantee a 6-0 result. I think Honduras were pretty poor on the evening and a little bit shell-shocked, as you said.
The U.S. made them poor, though.
Yes, that's true. But I think it points to the United States executing a clear and concise game plan. I think Landon Donovan threw some shade on that one too when he said like, "This is what the United States defense looks like when it has a plan."
Yep, when it has instructions.
When it has instructions,
is what he says. Okay, the US plays Panama Tuesday night in the next World Cup qualifier. We're going to preview that after the break. First, we want to tell you about today's sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by Health IQ. Health IQ is a life insurance company that wants to give financial rewards to health-conscious people.
Health IQ has partnered with major life insurance companies to get lower rates for people with a healthy lifestyle. They've used science and data to fight for lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people, including soccer players, runners, cyclists, weightlifters, swimmers, vegans, and vegetarians. Daryl Grove, there's some crossover there with this U.S. national team. Did you know that?
Well, I do know. You gave me a teaser earlier that you've prepared a quiz for me about a U.S. national team player who is a vegetarian?
Yes, at least as of 2016.
Okay.
I don't know if
that's only 3 months ago.
I don't know if he's the only one, but he's the only one that I could find quickly. So I'm just going to give you like clues, and you can maybe take guesses when you want to, or maybe you can wait. So your first clue, he's a member of the current U.S. men's national team.
Like the roster for this?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
He plays in Major League Soccer, but has not always played in Major League Soccer.
Okay. Is it, can I guess?
Uh-huh.
Is it Jermaine Jones?
It is Jermaine Jones. I was ready to keep going, but yeah, Jermaine Jones.
Do you know why that makes sense? Because of the shape he is in.
Right.
For, what is he, 35, I believe? And you would not know it, right?
35 or 36.
At least when he's fit and roaming up and down.
And amazingly, it was during I believe it was during the period when he was suspended after, when he got the red card for New England before he was allowed to play for Colorado. It was during that period. I was reading an interview with him in like January of 2016, where he was saying that it was like that he used that period to become more spiritual and also to evaluate his health choices. And
that's when he became a vegetarian.
Yep, no meat, no fish.
So we may have done it at the same time, me and Jermaine.
you guys are connected, and you didn't even know it. By the way, good guessing, my friend.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. 68 caps and 4 goals, born in Frankfurt, West Germany. Were your other clues?
I definitely would have got there eventually.
And then it was going to be stopped eating meat between the 15 and 16 MLS seasons due to a lengthy suspension. That one I feel like you probably would have figured out.
Okay, so the reason this is important is if you play soccer, if you're a runner, if you're a vegetarian, if you adopt any other sort of health-conscious lifestyle choice, Health IQ may be able to qualify you for discounted life insurance by taking your data, taking it to a major life insurance company and saying, hey, this person deserves a lower rate on their life insurance.
More rights, lower rate. There you go. So you can go to healthiq.com/TSS. The link is in the show notes to take the quiz and get a quote.
Yeah, so once you go there and you get on their website, you take quizzes to prove that you know about the vegetarian lifestyle or you know about playing soccer. And the soccer doesn't have to be professional. It can be just a Sunday game, can be just a pickup game. As long as you're doing some exercise or you're eating healthy, anything like that, you can get a lower rate on life insurance through Health IQ. Thank you to Health IQ for sponsoring today's episode.
And thank you to Jermaine Jones for being vegetarian, so I had questions to ask Daryl Grove. I know Sydney LaRue used to be a vegetarian, and I was excited to use her as well in a quiz for today.
Why didn't you make it?
Because then I read an interview where I think somebody asked, like, so you're a vegetarian? And she was like, I was a vegetarian for 3 years, but I don't like vegetables, and now I eat a lot of meat. So it seems like maybe she just took a break from meat for 3 years, and now she's making up for it.
I wonder if her form coincides.
Could be. Okay. A conversation for another day, because right now we got Panama to talk.
Okay, so one thing, this kind of ties in, but before we move on, the one of the things I learned watching the US against Honduras is that I think we can confirm that the US roster is now deep. Because you think of the number of injuries and suspensions to major players. I'm talking Yedlin, Chandler, Jones, Fabian Johnson pulling out, Jordan Morris getting injured.
Bobby Wood.
I even forgot Bobby Wood. There were so many sort of high-profile possible starters injured or suspended for the United States, and we still managed to field that team that looked very, very good. So I think the one thing maybe we should thank Klinsmann for is that in the last few years, his kind of unpredictable roster selection has led to a deep United States team.
Absolutely.
All right. And we expect to find out even more because 4 players have withdrawn from the roster and 1 has been added. Do you know them off the top of your head?
I know we've lost Jordan Morris because of that ankle injury. I know we've lost.
It was worse than we feared, right?
Yeah.
He should not have played that second half, it turns out, for Seattle.
Seems not. And then we've lost Michael Orozco. It looks like he had a knee issue.
Yep.
Sebastian Lletget for that ankle injury. Then John Brooks, he went out. He looked a little bit dazed. There was some concern about his abdomen. It looked like it was maybe a dehydration issue.
Yep.
Since then, it's also been reported that he had a sinus infection, so he has been sent home.
It seems like he maybe played with a sinus infection as well, which is a tough ask.
Which maybe could explain some dehydration because if you're taking a bunch of... I had not linked those two things. Now that makes sense because there was... I think it was only like 68 degrees at game time.
Yeah.
And so there was some question as to how do you get dehydrated if you're in that temperature.
You take a lot of Zyrtec.
But if you've taken a lot of medicine, then that might dry you out a little bit.
Some decongestant.
Yeah. So that could be.
Okay.
Which makes me then wonder would that make you fail a drug test if you take cold medicine?
I don't know.
I'm
sure they were very careful about what it was.
I'm fairly certain that Clint Dempsey was the one who got the random drug test after the game. Maybe it wasn't so random because they were like, wait a minute, you just came back and got a hat trick? Come on in.
This can't be right.
Either way, so they lost.
Clint Dempsey, I didn't realize.
Yeah. So they lost those 4 players. They brought in Paul Areola.
Yep.
And then obviously Jermaine Jones is now eligible, having served that suspension for yellow card accumulation.
Which brings the total on the roster to an even.
I have no idea anymore.
23.
Okay.
Right now, 23 fit and available players on the roster, traveling down to Panama to play Tuesday night.
You could have said 20, you could have said 30, and I would have been like, yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. There have been so many names linked and brought in and then sent home. It's confusing.
All right, information at the top here.
Yep.
It's Tuesday night. It's 10 p.m. Eastern. It's away to Panama. The game is on beIN Sports. If you don't have beIN Sports, you can watch it via the Go90 app for free. You don't even need to have a cable subscription or anything. So you can watch this game if you want to watch this game.
If you want to.
Well, you should want to, right? Because the US are now in 4th place with 3 points in the Hex. Panama are in, 3rd place with 4 points. So the US just needs to beat Panama to take 3rd place in the Hex, which felt impossible maybe a week ago.
Yeah.
Certainly in November, it felt like a long way away.
Yes, it did. It did.
Okay, so how tough is this trip to Panama? Because I'm scared of sort of being the podcast that cried wolf, because we made the case that Honduras would be tough to break down, and it ended up being 6-0.
I mean, it's very difficult to say with this Panama team because they go away to Trinidad, playing the same kind of...
last week.
Yeah, exactly. And they do lose 1-0 away to Trinidad, but that goal comes about when Roman Torres, I guess, loses his shoe.
Yes.
Has to come off. Takes a very long time to untie and then tie a shoe, which I think maybe longer than it should have taken.
And if that name's ringing some bells,
yeah.
Roman Torres is the Seattle Sounders centre back.
Indeed.
He plays for Panama, except when his shoelace is too tight or come off. Yeah.
So he's off, and that's basically when Trinidad come right back down. You can see the kind of gaps that are created when you're without one of your 2 center backs. It leads to problems, and in this situation, it leads to a goal for Kevin Molino.
Are you saying that this Trinidad win should have an asterisk next to it?
No, it's just more so because it's not like Panama went there and got beat 4-0 and are in this total state of disarray. I see, they went there without Blas Perez. He had a thigh strain he picked up in training, so he did not travel, but he might be fit for this U.S. game. We're not sure there. Then they sent home Fidel Escobar, who's a very young, exciting defender who plays for Sporting Club de Portugal B. Not their A team yet, but if he gets his disciplinary issues, maybe he'll be back in there. So it's difficult to say really like if this was their best team and if Roman Torres hadn't had a bad shoe, maybe they come away 0-0 and things are very different for Panama.
Or if Roman Torres had just stayed on the field and just rammed his foot back into his shoe and seen it out till half time.
Yes.
I thought that was a really odd decision by Roman Torres.
Maybe he saw Mario Balotelli failing to tie his shoes and having to get somebody to help him, and he was like, well, as long as I don't do that, we're fine.
Can we talk about Blas Perez for a second then? Because weirdly, he's the guy that I fear, just because I know he can really rile up defenders. He is kind of a Clint Dempsey type figure in that sense. He's maybe not quite in the same class, but I also know he's kind of a Panama hero, right? I mean, the guy they look to.
When Panama beat Honduras, it was on a free kick from Panama, which Blas Perez got for kind of very much drawing a foul. He kind of bumped into somebody, and then when they bumped back, he fell over. It was sort of, Blas. And that was kind of routine throughout that game. So it's definitely Blas Perez instigating and creating situations that favor Panama, certainly.
And I believe you told me, so Perez did not travel to Trinidad, but he is on this roster. So it looks like it could be sort of a day of decision whether Perez starts or not, or whether he plays or not. If not Perez, then it's Arroyo, the number 22, who played against Trinidad. Who I'm going to say, I don't know much about him. I'm just going to assume not as scary as Blas Perez.
No, I mean, not from reputation at least, but and that will make a difference because it seems like going away, Panama maybe a little more conservative, playing with kind of a single striker.
Yeah, it's 4-5-1, right?
Yeah,
they claimed 4-3-3, but it was 100% a 4-5-1.
Right,
up top,
and then in their November qualifier against Mexico, which ended 0-0 at home, right for Panama, that was maybe closer to a 4-4-2 with that second striker dropping in.
Gabby Torres,
exactly.
It was Blas Perez and Gabby Torres,
right? Who missed some chances, So I think that will factor in because if Perez is fit, then I wouldn't be surprised if it's Perez and Arroyo up top with Arroyo coming deep a little bit.
Okay, but speaking of Panama's shape, whether it is a 4-4-2 or a 4-5-1, I do know they get very compact. Right?
Yes.
And then they sort of, say if the US is going down the right-hand side, say it's Bedoya has the ball on the right, Panama will sort of get compact and then they will shuffle over to Bedoya's side, and they will just have bodies between you and the goal.
They will.
So they'll leave the, what would you call it, the far side? They'll leave the far side open, but they'll block up bodies in the side where you have the ball.
I would say this, though. Like we said, Honduras was a little bit up and down in terms of when they were pressing and how organized that defense was. I would say Panama even less organized at times, because it did seem like they would kind of send players over, or people would track players all the way across the field and then leave space in behind that then somebody else would have to go and sprint and try to cover.
Yes.
And so, again, it was only 1-0 away on that one goal when Roman Torres is out, but it's still there were lots of other opportunities where Trinidad would break, and Honduras seemed a little bit disorganized.
Right. Mexico held 0-0 though, so they do have something about them defensive right. If it's not, so Torres will play. Baloy will start alongside him, a player we've seen before. The guy I was also interested in was Ovalle. Ovalle, number 17, the left back, because he is an aggressive gentleman.
He's very aggressive. It seems like he kind of, like we saw Izaguirre do it a couple times against Mexico, for Honduras, where he would try to make that big play and be the first to get to the ball. Sometimes maybe misjudges, and so too does Ovalle, where he would either concede a foul or get beat because he overcommits. And that does seem like an opportunity for the United States, where if you can kind of suck him out and then use the creativity of, say, Pulisic or Clint Dempsey or Josie Altidore or whomever, you can maybe exploit that space in behind.
And I will say, against Honduras, this is one of the things we probably got right, because Leggett was able to sneak in behind Izaguirre, right? So maybe we can exploit Ovalle as well. What about when Panama are on the front foot?
Sure.
One series of play I kept noticing was Torres would get the centre-back, Seattle centre-back, would ping it out left to Quintero, who'd be the left winger, probably wear number 19, and then he would kind of quickly cross it. So that is something to look out for. If Panama have a quick switch, we've got to have our right back aware that Quintero is going to be receiving the ball and crossing it.
And that's where it's tough. It is really tough with this U.S. team, because it could be this or it could be that. Like, it's really tough to nail down who exactly is going to start and where. Like, I think like Tim Howard probably going to start. But is it going to be Jeff Cameron at right back or center back? I'm inclined to say he stays at right back, and here's why. It's because, and credit to Matt Doyle for this stat, that I think he said Honduras attempted 30 crosses in that game against the United States, obviously had 0 goals. So it seems like the United States did a really good job of limiting Honduras in terms of what they were able to do when those crosses came in, and maybe even the accuracy of those crosses.
And also limiting them going through the middle of the US. We forced them wide, essentially.
And so if you've got that long ball from Torres out to their left winger, who would be defended by Jeff Cameron won every single header on that side, and I think can do a good job of standing the defender up, or standing the attacker up rather, forcing him back and kind of keeping that contained back four.
And if it's Jeff Cameron, there's less chance that he is bombed forward as, say, Graham Zusi would, who is the other option at right back. All right, before we get to picking the US team, I think the two other players that MLS fans will be aware of and maybe should be thinking about, Armando Cooper, the Toronto centre midfielder, will probably be in midfield for Panama, and Anibal Godoy will also be in midfield. Having watched him score that chip and that long-range goal for San Jose, and in the couple games we saw, I'm a little bit scared of Godoy. He's a man in form, and sort of he's physical, he's kind of creative, he's kind of explosive. That's a man we need to be keeping an eye on from central midfield. He'll wear number 20 if you want to look out for him.
Yes, and this is not to... I mean, I agree with you, and I'm not trying to say, like, oh, no, whatever, he's not worth it. But
you think I'm the podcast that cried wolf?
A little bit in this situation, because I think sometimes you have that recency bias. You have that, I've seen him do big things, and I think he was your specific prediction, wasn't he? Or like you had reason to enjoy Godoy.
Right.
Didn't mean for that to rhyme, but whatever. And so I think sometimes with that, you can get this idea. I think we did this with like St. Vincent at one point, or maybe Trinidad when we played them in the last round, where we started to kind of be like, oh man, this guy plays here and he scored 26 goals in the Antiguan League. Like, who knows? Like, he could be really good.
To be fair, Godoy's playing in Major League Soccer.
I know. All I'm saying is that when you start to really deep dive on a person and you start to get used to that player, then you start to have expectations for what that player does.
You think he's going to score chipped goals every time he plays?
I mean, yeah, obviously. But I didn't see that much from him in that Trinidad game. It seemed like Cooper is the one who's very much dynamic, kind of all over the field, for good or for bad. Because he can then get caught out of position, but he can also make plays and lead counters.
Okay, then. So speaking of leading counters, that is how Panama play, right? They do that compact thing, then they try and break on the counter. What do we do if we're the United States? Let's get to picking our United States team. Here's my first suggestion of how Bruce Arena might do this. Things worked well against Honduras. I'm going to pick basically the same team in the same shape, Bradley deep, Pulisic at number 10, and just send them out again with roughly the same instructions.
Okay.
Is that feasible?
It's feasible. I don't think that's what happens.
Okay, why not?
Because I think Jermaine Jones plays in this game. I think you don't...
The other part of that is obviously Leggett can't start because he's injured, and John Brooks is injured and sent home. So you'd have to sort of plug new pieces into that same shape, but with the idea of having that same shape.
Right.
Fair?
Yeah. But I would worry about Jermaine Jones doing the kind of disciplined role that we saw Alejandro Bedoya do and we saw Sebastian Leggett do when he was in there.
Okay.
Now, we know Jermaine Jones has a good relationship with Bruce Arena. They seem to like each other. We know that Bruce Arena was very impressed by him in that first January workout.
Yes, he was.
Called him a beast, I think it was. They caught that one on audio.
Yeah.
So it might well be that Jermaine Jones is willing to kind of put in the work and do exactly what's asked of him in order to get that starting spot. There's just a little part of me that wonders if maybe we will see a return to sort of a 4-2-3-1, be a little bit more conservative because Bruce Arena said we want 4 points out of this round at a minimum. Maybe he's okay with getting that 1 point, at least in that first half, and then seeing what happens in the second.
So you're saying it's a Bradley Jones 2, right? 2 defensive midfielders. Yeah, maybe Jones is a bit more free to run them down, but Bradley stays.
Yeah.
And then it's probably Josie Altidore alone up top, and there's a band of 3 attacking midfielders. Is Dempsey in that 3?
Yep.
You can't drop Dempsey after scoring a hat-trick.
That's the thing, because then if Dempsey's in that, it's probably going to be Dempsey in the middle, which means Christian Pulisic goes wide, and then you have Darlington Nagbe on the other side.
Yeah, so Nagbe on the left, Pulisic on the right, Dempsey in the middle, Altidore ahead of all of them.
But then that, in and of itself, necessitates a change in your approach, and now you have Pulisic doing more disciplined role outside, as we talked about. He could. It's just either way, you're going to have to change some things. And so it's tough. Basically, I could see either one. I could see Jermaine Jones in the middle alongside Michael Bradley, but I could also see him in that Bedoya role, kind of doing a more disciplined role than we've seen him do for the United States.
I'll say this. He has played sort of on the right side of a diamond for the United States. So
did he do it in 2014 World Cup?
I think he might have done. Yeah. So this would not be absolutely new to Jermaine Jones. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what we see. The exact same team, except instead of Leggett starting, it's Jermaine Jones. Instead of John Brooks at left centre back, it is, I'm going to say Tim Ream, because that's who came in for John Brooks in the Honduras.
Yes. So and then it's basically from the 2014 World Cup. It's just Michael Bradley switching into the Kyle Beckerman role instead of being the furthest forward in that diamond. Yeah. So then do we go Villafana at left back, or is it Beasley?
I was really impressed with Villafana against Honduras. I kind of now think of him as the starting US left back.
Yep.
I wouldn't be surprised if Bruce Arena trusts DeMarcus Beasley more because he's been there, done that. Beasley's been to Panama before.
He has. He has
a collection of hats.
I think I would rather see, looking ahead to the World Cup, I think I would rather see Villafana starting. So I'm going to say
I'll test him.
So I'd rather see Villafana. So I'd rather see Tim Howard, Villafana. I think I'm with you. Like, if you want to go with what worked in the last game, or mostly worked in the last game, then it would be Tim Ream filling in for Brooks, and then it would be Omar Gonzalez, Jeff Cameron on the right, Michael Bradley, Jermaine Jones, Jonathan Nagbe, Christian Pulisic, Clint Dempsey, Josie Altidore.
Or it could be Bedoya. We don't want to overlook Bedoya again, because as I said before, I was impressed with Bedoya's performance for he played most of the game. We've got to think. It's almost like he started this game. He played so much of it.
I absolutely agree with you. I was really, really impressed by he came in. He didn't miss a beat. He knew exactly what he was supposed to do. I was so impressed by Alejandro Bedoya.
Like, he knew the same instructions as Leggett. Like, they'd both been sort of coached to play that position.
Yes.
Right?
And yet Jermaine Jones is going to start.
Because he's Jermaine Jones.
I think because you don't include him in the squad. Like, there's no, if you know he's suspended, it's at the beginning of his season, suspended for that first game, it's at the beginning of the season. Like, I just think you don't bring him in unless you're going to have him play a role in the starting 11 in one of these games. And maybe you want that tenacity and that kind of aggressive determination and confidence to go at Panama, in Panama. I think he plays. I've also seen, I'm kind of a believer in this, a lot of the U.S. soccer media has been about Jermaine Jones. Jermaine Jones returns from suspension. Let's follow Jermaine Jones. Let's see him on the plane. Let's see him on a bus.
Is that because U.S. soccer are kind of pushing him out there, and maybe some reporters have been given a little, like a nudge, nudge, wink, wink?
I tend to believe that type of stuff, where you start to see a lot of coverage. And similarly, though, we've seen a lot of coverage from the Panamanian press about Graham Zusi.
Well, that's for different reasons,
yes,
right? It's because he kept them out of the World Cup in 2014.
Yeah, there's that,
So we've already made the case, though, why we prefer Jeff Cameron at right back, just to win those headers, win those balls that are chipped out to Quintero. We didn't mention the idea of the right centre-back, left centre-back. The reason you can't just plug in Cameron next to Gonzalez, but Cameron instead of Brooks, is that John Brooks is left-footed, he's the left centre-back. And if you believe in balance of your centre-back's feet, then you need a left-footed centre-back, and that's why it's Tim Ream or it's Matt Beasley.
Yeah. And just based on the fact that it was Tim Ream who came in when Brooks went down, I'm going to say it's Tim Ream who starts. The one guy who I feel we've talked about the least in this entire show that I think we should also mention in terms of we are pleased with his performance in the quick take, hot take, and I'm very pleased with him now and excited to see what he does, is Josie Altidore. Because I think he did a really good job of dropping deep, of playing back to goal. That's not always been his strong suit, but even in that first goal, he challenges for a 50-50 ball, adjusts his body accordingly, chests it down, and that's what allows the United States to go and eventually have legit score. So I thought he did a really good job being physical, but also his vision for the goal, the fourth goal, 15 seconds into the second half. It's like a one-time reverse pass. It's what we saw Clint Dempsey do for Seattle. Josie Altidore equally capable of doing it for the U.S. national team. Yeah,
he's absolutely at his best when he's not just left up there and trying to win long balls, essentially. Essentially, he's at his best when he's not playing for Sunderland. Yeah. But when he's got Dempsey and Pulisic moving around and he can move around a bit and get more involved, I think his passing is kind of underrated. Think of that, the outside of the football that got Pulisic through on goal for that first goal.
So specific prediction number 1 for me, Jermaine Jones starts. Specific prediction number 2, I'm going to say Josie Altidore scores. Those are my 2.
Yes, okay, fair enough. Did he not score against Honduras?
He did not.
That's strange, right? Because you think from him as having such a great game.
Right.
Okay, we also didn't mention Darlington Nagbe. Are we just assuming he starts essentially like left midfield or left attacking midfield based on his performance against Honduras?
I would think so. Yeah.
There's no reason not to, right? Until Fabian Johnson comes back, I feel like Nagbe owns that space.
I know some people were frustrated. I think 2 different times he tried to dribble forward, advance the ball by himself, got tackled, and that did lead to a counterattack. And maybe there's some concern that he could get a little bit ill-disciplined, and that could lead to problems against Panama. But I think that's not enough of a justification given everything else he did in terms of his possession, his positioning, everything he did defensively on that left side with Villafana. Yep. I think maybe there's that pre-existing relationship from Portland that worked very well. Yeah. And so I think, yes, there may be a few criticisms of him, but certainly nothing close to justifying him not starting.
I still love him because he makes sure, especially alongside the way Bradley was playing, he makes sure the US passes quickly. No one puts their foot on the ball, looks around, he's passing, he's moving, he keeps the US tempo up, and then he's also good for just one burst of a dribble that you just don't. You think, oh, he's just jogging forward with the ball. Oh, he's accelerated a bit. Oh, he's just wiggled past that guy. Oh, he's on a slalom. Suddenly, Darlington Nagbe's halfway up the field before you've even noticed that he's got going.
And so there's that, from the attacking aggressive standpoint, but also routinely, we talked about that time when it was Villafana, Bradley, and Pulisic cutting off the forward passing angles. There were also times when it would be oh, why can't he drop back? Oh, Darlington Nagbe's cut that off. Yes. And he was kind of routinely also doing that unsung defensive work to block off passing angles, passing channels that maybe didn't get the recognition that it deserved.
Isn't he kind of similar to Bradley in that way, that you don't necessarily back him in a 50-50 challenge? He's not going to go flying in and win balls like that, but he is going to close down all the angles and make it harder for the opposition team to play through.
I would say so.
And again, maybe that goes to an Arena versus Klinsmann type thing. I feel like Klinsmann would prioritise the big Jermaine Jones slide tackle, whereas Arena seems to be prioritising the cut off the angles, let's block them out space-wise.
So with all that said, congratulations to Nick Raimondo, Matt Beasler, and Paul Areola for starting.
Those days are over. Oh, actually, Areola's a good shout to be a direct replacement for Leggett because he offers a bit more of that width and pace and sort of attacking thrust that Leggett offered to start against Honduras.
Yep.
I still say that the starting 11 is now a bit more predictable because we kind of know what Bruce Arena wants to do.
I can't wait for it to be 8 changes, and you're going to be so confused. Yeah.
All right, so a reminder again, the game is Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Eastern. It's the US away to Panama. It's on beIN Sports. If you don't have beIN Sports, you should be able to watch it legally and for free on the Go90 app. That's Go90. We're not paid by them, we're not sponsored by them, but we do know that you can do that, and we want to make sure our listeners know how to watch the game where possible.
Absolutely. Now, you said 10 o'clock kickoff. I have it at 10:05 over here, Daryl Grove. So I'm just saying, if people tune in and you waste 5 minutes of their life, you don't want that evil on you.
No, you want that beIN Sports pregame.
Okay.
So for us, we have practice Tuesday night until 10.
Yep.
I think we should come to the office, watch it as live, but maybe with a 15-minute delay, which will still allow us to do a quick take, hot take, just maybe 15-20 minutes behind what we normally do.
Maybe not even that much, because we can hopefully get here quickly enough that we won't miss too much and maybe catch up at halftime.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. There you go. I forgot halftime's free time.
But we won't be very interactive on social media, I would say, during that game.
That's true, because we'll be behind at least for the first half. So
no spoilers.
Expect a quick take, hot take late Tuesday night, and then maybe we'll meet up here with some coffee Wednesday morning and do our sort of deeper dive review.
I'll say morning-ish.
Morning-ish.
Sure. Yeah.
11:59 a.m.
Yeah, sure. You know those situations when you're walking your dogs on like a Saturday and you say good morning and then you realize it's 1:30 and it still feels like morning? I'm going to say that I'm going to consider morning the day after a game that's going to finish after midnight.
That sounds fair.
All right.
All right, Tyler Rockwell, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Right back at you, buddy.
Listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you again late on Tuesday night.